Good afternoon and welcome to Tuesday Tea. I'm your host, Meg, and here's my tea. This week I'm having a ginger and lemon tea, and I've already had about half of it. I guess I just convinced myself this week by posting about ginger and then lemon a couple weeks ago that I just needed to have one, so that's what I've got. If any of you are wondering what this bluebird has to do with God's providence, I am happy to tell you. So, as you all know, I love herbs and healing our bodies and biohacking and that sort of fun thing. But what you may not know is that my husband is a pastor. And a few years ago, when he was looking for his first full-time head pastor job, we traveled all over the country looking for churches that we felt like were a good fit for us. We wanted to stay in a particular denomination, and it was his first full-time job. So there was a lot of traveling to do. We visited churches in Pennsylvania and Ohio and Louisiana and Washington State. And the story I'm going to tell today is about the church that we visited in Washington State, known as the town is known as the Bluebird capital of the world. At the time, I was 7 months pregnant with our fourth child. We took 2 flights, a 3-hour drive, first through pouring rain and then up through thick, dense fog in the mountains of Washington. And we arrived late at night to a hot meal with strangers in a tiny town that consisted of 82 people. And there was a K-12 school in town with 88 kids in it. So what they would do is bus in kids from a 500 square mile area, and they all came to this tiny little school in this remote area in Washington. So to give you an idea of where I grew up, it was on the East Coast, a suburb of Philadelphia, and about an hour and a half away from the Atlantic Ocean. So very much East Coast. One town blends into the next, very populated. You don't know people that live on the next street over because there's just enough people to know on your own street, if you're the kind of people who talk to your neighbors, which we were. So to go to a town like that was just very different for me. The people in this town were very likable. They were tight-knit and friendly. They were the kind of people that I would want to raise my kids around. And the interview went well. I liked the manse, which is important. And they were just good people. It was also rodeo country, which is cool. I had never been to a rodeo. But the idea of being so far from home was just deeply concerning to me. And I wanted a souvenir in case we never returned, but I couldn't find one anywhere. There wasn't a ton of shopping in that town, being made of 82 people. So yeah, that didn't work out. But after church on Sunday, after we had the interview and we were saying goodbye to everyone, a woman came out and gave us a brown paper bag filled with these bluebirds as souvenirs for our kids. So that was really sweet. It was a long journey home. We had to drive down the mountain and just look at all the scenery, the plateau of the mountain, and just brown everywhere, which was so different from Ohio and Pennsylvania, because this was November, so not too far into, it wasn't winter, it was the end of fall. And where I've always lived, the grass has always stayed somewhat green, but there, even in late fall, it was just brown everywhere. Everywhere was tan. And there were tumbleweeds that rolled around. I did not expect that in Washington State. It was greener in the valley. People grew hops and they farmed different things. So that was cool. But yeah, the closest big town to this little town was 45 minutes away. So it just would have been a huge culture shock for me to do that. So we took the drive, we hit Portland again, and it was pouring again, and we took 2 flights home, red eyes, from Portland to Chicago, from Chicago to Philly. Then we drove home, and then right before we went to bed, exhausted, my husband saw that we got an email from them with their decision regarding next steps, and they said they didn't want us because they just felt like it wouldn't be a good fit, in large part because they recognized I was a mom with young kids, and I believe they said there weren't any other young kids in the town at that point. They must have lived around the town because there was a school, but it would have been a very hard thing for me, and they probably recognized that we wouldn't want to stay there very long if we did not feel like it was our home. So I think that was really wise on their part, and I was grateful for it. Although rejection isn't fun, no one enjoys being rejected. I was grateful to them for seeing what I was hesitant to admit after our 4th interview. Like at this point, we're starting to feel a little desperate, like what's going on? But I think if they had offered it, it would have been really hard to turn down, even knowing that we probably shouldn't be there, just because, you kind of get desperate after a while, after months of searching and interviewing. So, but providentially, the next day we got an email from Indiana, from the church that we did end up serving in for 8 years, with wonderful, warm people who loved our family and who we loved serving. And we were there for 8 years, so it was really a good fit for us. And that, incidentally, was about exactly a day's drive from my parents. It was a long day's drive, but I could get there in a day. And later, I needed to do that quite a bit when there was sickness in the family. So I was very grateful that we were in Indiana and not Washington State. So I tell you all of this as a reminder that God doesn't just open doors to places that he wants us to go, but he also, in his providence, closes doors to places where he does not want us to go. He's providentially directing all of our steps, and if we trust him to lead us, we'll enjoy the ride a lot more. So I have this now in the windowsill of my kitchen. So when I do dishes, I can look at it and just think about how when things are rough, like if God's closing a door, it's for a reason, and I can be grateful for it. So I hope you enjoyed this tea time. I will be back next week discussing something else. Not sure what I'm going to discuss, but I've got a whole week to figure it out. If you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them. And if you have any comments regarding how God has closed or opened doors in a way that, currently you can see there was a reason, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thanks, and have a great week.